All right, welcome. So, after putting the kids to bed, I decided that it's time to go live. I know I'm a few minutes late, but let's dive in. So, I was hoping to open with the conversation around the raids in California and a few things that were being said, and the fact that it appears that the Democrats are defending, let's just say traffickers, okay, in this situation. But something else popped up on my feed, and it turns out that this is the gift that keeps on giving, okay? When you think that this is going to begin to die down, it's as if someone at the DOJ decides that they're going to just get a gallon of gasoline and dump on the fire. Look, it's weird. The DOJ opposes Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal in Supreme Court filing. And this is weird because if you say that there's nothing to hide, and yet we have headlines like this following other headlines about a potential cover-up, it appears like there's something to hide. Now, those of you who have followed my content know that I have been accused of being a Trump supporter. I enjoy Trump's take on policy and a few other things that he's been doing, okay? But this is something that has divided the base. This is something that I expect everyone to kind of talk about and say, look, we have to sort this out, all right? And I don't think the Trump administration is doing enough to quell this issue. So let's look at the facts of this story, okay? I'm using ground news, okay, to get the details and the actual facts of this story. On July 14th, 2025, government attorneys called on the U.S. Supreme Court to decline review of Ghislaine Maxwell's 2021 conviction for sex trafficking in New York. Maxwell's appeal argues that a 2007 non-prosecution agreement for Jeffrey Epstein barred prosecution of his co-conspirators. But prosecutors say it only applied in Florida. Maxwell was convicted by a federal jury for trafficking girls to Epstein and abusing some herself, while Epstein died by suicide in jail in 2019, which is another conversation, okay? We all know what's going on over there. Now, a Department of Justice memo from July 7th reported a systematic review found no incriminating client list for Epstein and declared no further disclosure warranted. The Supreme Court's decision this year will determine if Maxwell's 20-year sentence remains, while her representatives say she would testify before Congress about Epstein. So we're going to look at what both sides are saying about this. We're going to look at conservative-leaning outlets, and then we're going to look at left-leaning outlets and what they have to say about this story. So let's look at what Fox News has to say, and I think they have a video on this, and we'll just take a look at this. I opened this up earlier, okay, and let's watch this video and see what Fox News has to say. And let me know in the comments what you think about this story, because it is mind-blowing that that the DOJ would... I think someone in there just wants to blow up the Trump administration. That's my thought, because it's as if they just keep doing things that don't make sense. All right, so let's listen to what Fox News has to say about this report.
Upload your videos to YouTube, upload to Restream, where we will live stream it to YouTube and...
Yeah, okay. I assume that's Ghislaine. Okay. Can we get to the story, please? Seriously? All right, so this is weird. It's just footage of her walking. Okay, this is crazy. Okay, I'm going to read the article. Now, this is upsetting. All right, the Department of Justice on Monday asked the Supreme Court to deny Jeffrey Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal of her sex trafficking conviction, a move that comes as the department has recently come under fire for its handling of Epstein's files. Maxwell, 63, was convicted by a jury in New York in 2021 Yes, we know that. She appealed her conviction, saying it should be tossed out for several reasons, including that a plea deal Epstein reached with the federal government in 2007 immunized her, and that statuses of limitations had run out. Is there a status of limitation for abuse and trafficking? Just let me know in the comments, because I don't think this argument makes sense. All right, now, so this is a conservative leaning outlet, and they're simply saying that her plea case has no standing. The DOJ's response to the High Court comes after the department recently ignited. We know that, yes, Congress should call on Maxwell to testify. Yes, I agree. Maxwell should be called upon to testify before Congress, citing anonymous sources in the Daily Mail reported. I said when this thing was blowing up that the Trump administration should actually allow for a press conference. In fact, Donald Trump won the election by going on interviews on different podcasts. He did multi-hour interviews on podcasts. And right now, I haven't seen him appear on any podcast. He's shown up on mainstream media a lot, but I haven't seen him show up on any of the podcasts that were responsible for, at least for a large part, for a lot of the young votes to swing his way. He hasn't gone back to Joe Rogan, and I don't think that the Joe Rogan experience would work, because Joe has a format and the president would have to go to his ranch and everything, so that's fine. But every other podcast that would allow or that would agree to go to the White House to interview the president should be called in. And President Trump should have a long form interview with all of these podcasts explaining this mess, because it is a huge mess right now. All right, so let's see what the left is saying about this story. I've sped through the story on the right, and they're being very conservative with the report. Okay, so who's on the Epstein list? Someone who may know is asking the Supreme Court for relief. That's Ghislaine. I don't trust videos anymore since the last one took a dump on the feed. So let's see. As the fight escalates among MAGA supporters over what the Trump administration is and isn't disclosing about Jeffrey Epstein's potential clients, the legal battle of Epstein's associate Ghislaine Maxwell is also heating up. Look, I don't bury the lead. Let's go straight into the story. All right, we know she was convicted, yes. The Justice Department said this month, in reference to Epstein's case, that no such list exists in its record, but they said that they had it on the Attorney General's desk. The Attorney General said it's on my desk for review. So what did she mean? She said she meant that the files were on her desk. Look, I don't think we're the bulk of us who follow this are stupid. We watch the news, we support policies that make sense, and then we push against policies that don't make sense. And this here doesn't make sense. You said that there was a list on your desk sitting for review, and then suddenly the list doesn't exist, doesn't pass the smell test. Okay, so in a memo released July 7th, we know that the memo that was released in the dead of weekend, a Sunday evening, and to Axios, the government lawyers urged the Supreme Court on July 14 to reject Maxwell's appeal of her 2021 sex trafficking conviction. Maxwell is arguing that a 2007 plea deal for Jeffrey Epstein meant prosecutors shouldn't have been able to go after her. So she's saying that the plea deal that Jeffrey Epstein entered into protected her from prosecution, and she should be allowed to walk free. Okay, so this story is looking really weird. Now, Ghislaine is someone who seems to know things, but I don't see anything in here that says that she is willing to offer up any information that could that could sweeten the deal for the DOJ. I think the DOJ should be asking for more information and not just shutting down this conversation. Now, this is the 14th, and this is a full week since this scandal broke, and it doesn't seem to be losing any momentum. Every other day, more information is popping up on my feed. On CNN, there was some stats that they presented that said that that search on the Epstein files had increased 1,200%. Okay, over the last week, and that's insane. Okay, so it means that people really care about this, and it also means that if the Trump administration doesn't handle this well, it's going to backfire in spectacular fashion. I was talking to my wife, and I said to her, my wife she's neither here nor there. She thinks that my coverage favors Trump, disproportionately. But I simply said to her, look, I look at the facts and I look at policy, and I simply state my position because I have a brain and two eyes. However, on this matter, I do not agree with the Trump administration. They should have handled this carefully. They should have used the podcast platforms to exhaustively interrogate the DOJ and everyone involved to find out what exactly was going on. Pam Bondi couldn't stay away from cameras before this last week, and now she's barely. I haven't been looking out for her, but I haven't seen any interviews of her in front of the camera trying to clean up this mess. The last appearance with her at the briefing with Trump at the cabinet meeting, that statement was shallow. It didn't mean anything as far as I was concerned. It simply meant you guys didn't understand what I meant. And that sounds like an argument that a wife has with their husband when they say, I said something, but you should have felt what I meant when I said that thing. This isn't a private conversation. This is politics. This is public policy. And this is a situation that matters to literally millions of people at this point. Now, as an immigrant, okay, I'm sure that there are a bunch of people that will say that immigrants should mind their business. But look, if we're going to be having decent conversations around how the United States should position itself as a world leader, it should also position itself as a moral leader. All right, it shouldn't just be a leader in strength, okay, and in the economy. It should be a leader where policy is concerned, not policy, but where morals are concerned. All right, it is immoral for this kind of abuse to go unpunished. It is immoral for anyone to look, no matter how powerful they are. In one of my videos last week, I did say that the people who are involved in this are very powerful people. They are world leaders. Okay. Again, I was talking to my wife and I said to her, I'm sorry, it's a hot Monday evening. Okay. And I'm sweating with all the lights in here. So, I said to her, look, you didn't go to Epstein's Island if you weren't a multi-billionaire. All right. These aren't small people. These aren't people who are not significant. These are the movers and shakers of global economy. And if these are the kinds of people that were doing the things that have been said were being done on that island, we should all be concerned, because these are the guys who call the shots on policy. These are the guys who lobby heavily in Washington, D.C. And these are the guys who run other countries, okay? Other countries where the rest of us live. And if that is the kind of thing that they allow and that they practice, then we should all be concerned. That is my position. All right, so leave a chat and let me know what you think. Do you think that the Epstein files should be released? Do you think that Ghislaine should be brought before Congress? And whatever she knows, she has to spill. All right, maybe. Now, do you agree? Now, this isn't something that I've seen anywhere, okay, from the DOJ or the Trump administration spokespeople. I haven't seen any of that. But do you think that the Trump administration should offer a plea deal for Ghislaine to offer up solid information and intel on people who came to the island? Okay, do you think that there should be a plea deal where she reveals names of people who came to the island? Let me know if you think so. All right, so let's have a quick conversation here about this. Okay, now the chat lines are open. All right, I will be answering your chat in real time. Before we go to the next story, we're going to be jumping into the situation in California in a bit. Okay, now, so the Epstein situation is not going away. It's not going away. I don't think the Trump administration really appreciates how dire the situation is. All right, it has many layers that will continue to unveil themselves. There's the issue of the powerful names that are involved. There's the issue of the victims. There's the issue of the trust of the voters. There's the issue of anyway. Let's get your comments in as soon as we can. Now we'll jump to the next story. All right. Now the next story features. Oops, I'm on the wrong window. Sorry. All right, I'm on the wrong window. So the next story features. I'm going to need to mute this. I want it to play immediately. Okay, it's muted. All right. So here's what's going on. All right, we have an ICE raid that took place in California, and right on cue, we have the Democrats stepping up to complain about what happened during the ICE raid. Basically, they don't want ICE raids going on in California. Now, let's hear what they have to say about this, and then we'll find out what may have actually been going on in that farm or on that farm, because certain people were found in the farm who don't have very good records, and they had minors on the farm. Okay, so let's listen to this story.
Inside this internment camp, which it is nothing less than that description, were really appalling.
We saw humans being held in cages. You heard it from Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. 32 people per cage, 3 toilets in each cage for these 32 people, and their drinking water comes from the toilet.
What?
That was Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Congressman Maxwell Frost describing the inhumane conditions at Alligator Alcatraz after a guided tour today. Their visit comes after a federal judge has ordered the Trump administration to stop making immigration arrests without probable cause, ruling that officers in Southern California can't rely on someone's race or the fact that they're speaking Spanish.
All right, so hold on. These guys now, Morton Lund, okay, said free Maxwell, there's no list. Okay, so she has nothing to share, which is one way to look at it, because it is. So the question is, if there's no list, why is she in jail? Okay, and according to the DOJ, Morton says there's no victims either. Now, do you agree with Morton? Because you don't go to jail for 20 years with no evidence. There was something going on. The DOJ knew something was going on. They had some evidence, and Epstein was put in jail for something. Ghislaine followed after he was found dead in his cell. So what is going on? What do you think is going on? Now while we're in the chat, chatting amongst ourselves about this situation, about the Epstein case and what actually is going on with that. All right. The Democrats are telling us what is going on in the detention center called Alligator Alcatraz. All right. And they're saying that did he say that they were drinking out of the toilets? you know. So we're maybe on one of these streams, we're going to go back and look at the tour, okay? Because I think there was a video where there was a tour through the facility, and then we'll see if what these guys are saying is actually true, because the Democrats have a way of figuring out the best words to use to gin up outrage. All right, so we'll go and we will confirm that, but let's keep listening to this story. Morton says no princes, no kings, no billionaires, no young boys for the billionaire. Yes, we're on YouTube, Morton. Okay, so yes, look, again, now I said this to my wife when we were speaking this evening, and I said to her, look, for as long as there have been nations, all right, the wealthiest people in these nations have always done these things. They've always done these things. And it is not pretty, all right? When you look at the deep, dark underbelly of this world, all right, you will see things that would make your blood boil, okay? There are people who get away with the most heinous crimes simply because they are powerful and wealthy, all right? It has always been that way. Will the United States of America stand up and stop this? Or is the United States of America the chief perpetrator of these crimes? That's the question. Let me know in the comment section. So let's go on with this story.
To stop and detain them. Now, I want to take a moment to highlight some of the more horrific scenes we have unfortunately witnessed this week. Take, for example, Jaime Alanis Garcia. He was a Mexican farm worker who spent nearly a decade picking tomatoes at Glass House Farms in Camarillo, California. On Thursday, during an immigration raid that drew protesters trying to protect those workers, Jaime called his family in fear. Moments later, while trying to escape, he fell 30 feet from a greenhouse roof. He suffered severe spinal and head injuries and currently remains on life support. That was arguably the most brutal incident of the week, but unfortunately, it is not the only one. ICE is becoming more public, more aggressive in how it targets migrants. One viral video shows officers chasing a Honduran landscaper into...
All right, so I, as an immigrant, like, this should be something that affects me. If you were on my live stream last week, okay, some of you who watched it saw how I reacted when I was telling my own personal stories about family who were affected by immigration policies and things that that happened eventually. And I don't want to get into that because it was a very sore conversation for me. Now, when I look at these stories by MSNBC, and I have never seen MSNBC cover anything conservative favorably. I have not. If you have, please let me have the links, let me have the videos. Now, when you have an outlet like MSNBC that consistently skews against a certain position or against a certain group, it is no longer a news outlet. All right, it's no longer a news outlet. It is basically a propaganda outlet for one side. All right, because I do not see them I didn't see them calling out the Biden administration with the many gaffes that the Biden administration had in its 4-year term. So for them to consistently come out with stories that seem to inflame and say that, okay, these are migrants. Look, ICE doesn't go after immigrants, okay? They go after illegal immigrants. As an immigrant, I came into this country legally. I came through the port of entry with a visa and a work permit, okay? And I did that legally. Now, when we have people who jump the line and then, look, I know the weeks and months I waited for the embassy to call for my passport. All right. And while I'm doing that, somebody is simply sneaking across the border, not going through due process, because I know what I had to go through to be able to get into the country. So someone just sneaks across the border, and then I'm supposed to agree that that they are the same as me. I went through a port of entry, checked in, my passport was stamped, I was given a work permit, and I'm in the country legally. And somebody else sneaks in illegally, and then MSNBC puts us on the same level. All right. Now, ask me if that's fair. Okay, to start with. Now, I know, coming from the third world, I know that it is hard living in the third world. It is hard living in the third world. Okay. And if anyone says to me, okay, come in. Okay, come in free of charge. Don't worry. When you get to the port of entry, we'll stamp your passport and then we'll sort you out. I would find my way to the port of entry, but that's not what the Biden administration did. Okay, these people didn't go through a port of entry. They all they went through different holes in the wall. They went through different vulnerable spots along the border. They were not checked in. They were not processed adequately. And then there were a few who were identified as criminals. And once they were in the States, they didn't say, look, I'm leaving my criminal ways behind me and I'm going to become a contributing citizen of the United States. They didn't do that. What did they do? They decided that they were going to continue their criminal ways in the United States. And we saw a few of them. We saw the results of a few of those activities. Okay, so when MSNBC equates people like me, okay, immigrants like me, with people who didn't go through the port of entry, that is insulting. Okay, now I'm talking about MSNBC. Okay, I'm not talking about the immigrants. Look, people are desperate. People need to leave the desperate circumstances that they've lived in. They do. But you cannot sign off on this behavior. Now, MSNBC is going, bending over backwards to try to say that the Trump administration is doing something horrible. They've said that Alligator Alcatraz is an inhumane detention facility. They say that ICE agents are running down immigrants and farm workers, are injuring themselves while trying to hide from ICE agents who are there to enforce the law. All right. And then it is all of a sudden Trump's fault that someone crossed the border illegally, is being paid by a farmer who grows cannabis. They didn't mention it. Okay. This was a cannabis farm. All right. Well, maybe cannabis is legal, has been legalized in California. Well, it's neither here nor there. I don't support hallucinogens, okay? So all of this is going on, and then we have them running interference for a criminal enterprise, because this is what's really going on in the cannabis farm. So here's a Fox News report about what they found, or who they found, in the cannabis farm.
All right, here we go. The White House legal battles continue as the Trump administration is now appealing a California judge ruling against ICE immigrants.
All right, so let's see this. So these guys here are throwing stones, okay? MSNBC calls them protesters. That they were protesters who came to show support for the farm workers. And these protesters are throwing rocks.
As the Trump administration
all right?
is now appealing a California.
So according to MSNBC, these are peaceful protesters. All right, it's okay for them to violently attack ICE agents. All right, so let's go on.
Judge ruling against ICE immigration tactics used during raids.
It comes as we're learning more about the hundreds of illegals that were arrested during a marijuana farm raid in the state last week.
So much of this story, 2/3 of the media isn't interested in. We're interested in the whole thing. Doug Luzader is live in Washington with the details. Doug.
Brian, Ainsley, and Lawrence, good morning. The administration is pushing back pretty hard, first of all, against this federal judge in California with the Homeland Security, with the Secretary of Homeland Security calling that ruling ridiculous. The judge granted temporary restraining orders last week in California, banning agents from targeting people based on race, their language, or their workplaces.
All right, so people aren't being targeted based on race or language. They're targeted because they came into the country illegally. If someone comes into the country and they can't present something as simple as a visa or a work permit on request, all right, that's a problem. That's a problem. I came into the country, and to get a job, I needed to present a work permit. It's not racist for anyone to look at me with my complexion and my accent, and I say I need a job, and then the next question they ask me is, do you have a work permit? That's not racist. It's not racist. It's just following the law. There's a reason for work permits.
The administration says that mischaracterizes what they were doing, and an appeal is in the works. And we are learning more from the administration about some of the more than 300 immigrants that were arrested at that California cannabis.
All right, so look at these guys who were found in the marijuana farm, on the cannabis farm. All right, this guy here is convicted of attempted that. Okay, you can read the screen. Sexual. Oh God, I use the word. YouTube is going to have a. So look at all of these guys. All right, these are all assaulters. Let me just say that they are most hit and run, DUI. Okay, that's a DUI. The fourth guy, 3-time burglary and DUI. These are not the cream of the crop. All right, these are not rocket scientists.
Last week, one, we're told, had been convicted of kidnapping, attempted rape, and attempted child molestation, and he was actually deported back in 2006. Another convicted of rape and DUI, and the list goes on with other DUI and burglary convictions.
All right, so these are the kinds of people that MSNBC and Governor Gavin Newsom are running interference for. These are the guys that they're trying desperately to keep in the country. Okay. Are these the kinds of people you would visit you would ask to come visit your home? Okay. Let me know in the comment section or in the chat. Are these the kind of people that you want in your home? I have 3 kids. One of them is a girl. Would I want any of these first 2 guys in my home with my little girl? Right? Let me know in the comment section, because sometimes, sometimes when we hear these incendiary language coming from platforms like MSNBC or Governor Newsom with his teary eyes saying how the administration is targeting people who don't speak the language and so on, we don't hear the common sense, position of simply getting people like this out of the country. You don't want these people in your home. Why would you want them in your country? It's a really simple question. Do you want someone like this in your home? All right. The guy who is who has been convicted 3 times for burglary. Do you want him in your home? While you are asleep, he robs you blind. Is that the kind of person you want in your home? If you don't want this guy in your home, why do you want him in your country?
Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem says illegal immigrants need to self-deport.
What I would encourage everybody is that if they're concerned about being in this country illegally, go home. Go home. I have traveled to 10 different countries and worked with their governments from these countries where they come from, and said, when they come home, would you start programs for them to be welcomed back to their own country? Many of them are setting up programs so that when their people come home, they can get a loan for a house.
All right, so let's talk, okay? Let's talk. All right, there are a few of us who are watching, and I appreciate your time, and let's have a conversation. All right, we've talked about the Epstein situation. Morton Lund left a few ideas, and a few of you might have other ideas about that conversation, about whether the Epstein case is going anywhere. Is it going away, or do we need to continue to push for answers in this matter? I have presented my position that the United States has to not only present itself as the economic and military power of the world and policy dictator of the world, because yes, the United States dictates policy for the world, but should also set up itself as the moral example for the world. Because if the world is watching and this is how the United States handles the Epstein situation, and it is very clear to anyone with 2 eyes and a brain. We said this about the Biden administration. I said it in my older videos while Biden was president. I said anyone with 2 eyes and a brain can see that there's something wrong with some of the things that they did. I said it again and again. And then for those who claim that I'm a Trump supporter, yes, I support his policies. But I don't blindly follow anyone. This is wrong. This is wrong. Now, does this put food on the table of Americans? I don't think it is a matter of economy. This is a matter of conscience. And a lot of Americans and people who live all over the world are concerned about how this reflects on the United States and reflects on the kind of leadership currently in office. And this is going to it's going to affect the midterms. I think it's going to affect the midterms if it is not handled properly. That's my position. So what do you think? Let me know in the chat. Let's have a conversation in the chat about the situation with the immigrants. Look, I can empathize with people who want to leave their countries and move over to the United States. I can empathize with them, and I know that many of them live in very horrific situations and circumstances. I do. I can empathize with that. However, there is a right way to do things. There's a right way to do things. And even when they do come into the country, all right, a handful of them are creating such a horrific image of illegal immigrants that now most of them are seen as criminals because of the crimes that they've committed. Right now, instead of turning around and making this a partisan issue, all right, that people who want violent, criminal, illegal immigrants out of the country, all right, are now being labeled as racist and bigots, that we should really have a common sense conversation about this. This is wrong. If you will not let a violent criminal into your home, why should you let them in your country? It's a really simple thing. And this is coming from an immigrant, right? This is not popular. It's not popular. And look, I'm not here for a popularity contest. I'm just here to lay down truth. And hopefully we have a group of people who agree with the truth, no matter how it feels. All right. So on the immigration matter, do you think that the United States is going about this the right way? Personally, all right, I think the principle is sound, that anyone who wasn't invited into the country shouldn't stay in the country. They were not invited, they shouldn't stay. Secondly, criminal, illegal immigrants should be the first to go. In my last video, I said that dreamers, there has to be a bipartisan agreement on what to do about dreamers, because there are people who are law-abiding who just want a better life for their kids. I left my country to bring my kids over here to give them a better life. Dreamers need to have a path into being integrated into the system, a pathway towards earning their way into staying in the country. They have to earn their way into staying in the country. If the fact of removing them from the country is going to be an impossible task, because there are literally over 10 million of them in the country, it's nothing less than consistent ICE raids for the next 8 years to get all of them out of the country. This is what it's going to look like, and I don't think it's sustainable. And that's my honest opinion. I don't think consistent ICE raids throughout the Trump administration and beyond is sustainable. At least ICE raids at this scale, I don't think it's sustainable. Do you agree? Do you think I'm right? Let me know. Okay, I'm watching the chat. I'm waiting for you guys to push back, right? So don't be shy. I think that there has to be a bipartisan conversation around a path towards regularizing their permission to stay. All right, finding out who is who. All right, if they weren't cleared at the port of entry, it's time to say, okay, let's look at those who, since they were here, have contributed to the economy in the United States. How many of them have jobs? How many of them have attempted to contribute to the society? How many of them work in places like soup kitchens and shelters? How many of them actually work in places of that offer a public service for free? Find those people. They've been doing it for 4 years. Identify them. Have people who can vouch for them, people who are trusted, and then find a path towards regularizing their stay in the United States. Have it as a bipartisan conversation. Doing these ICE raids for the next 8 years, in my opinion, is not sustainable. It's my opinion. It's my opinion. I have put out my opinion on people coming into the country without being invited and not coming in through the port of entry. I've put my position out there. I've put my position on how other immigrants who came in legally feel about that. But let's talk about the enforcement. All right. The sanctuary cities have refused to cooperate with ICE. So ICE has to go in like a SWAT team to get these illegals out. And once they attempt to do the job that the sanctuary cities and states have refused to do, they are resisted by the state and attacked by violent rioters, because those are not protesters. People who throw rocks at federal agents are not protesters. They are rioters and they are violent. And that's the kind of atmosphere they have to work under to do their job. It's not sustainable. Somebody's going to get hurt. And the narrative is going to be that it is because they attempted to discriminate against people who didn't look Caucasian or speak the language. All right. So that's my position. And before we wrap this up, okay, I'd like to know what you think about these stories. All right, I'm going to give us a couple of minutes to have a conversation, and then we're going to call it a night. I have a night shift. Okay, I'm going to be working tonight, so I'm just going to do a quick dive into the comments. Okay, now I have a few comments to go through, and I would like to read through a couple of them. All right, there's a chat over here, and then I have some comments. All right, now concerning the ICE raids, I have a comment here that says ICE is being attacked. The worst of the worst, a grandma at church, a father at a doctor's office. This man is not thinking. He is ruled by hate and has nothing to do with the rule of law. He's referring to Tom Homan. Look, the rule of law, the expedited removals was a policy that was voted in under a Democrat president and was enforced by Clinton and Barack Obama. So what makes this situation different? It's simply because Donald Trump is using a law that Democrats voted in, and Trump is using that same law that Obama used and that Bill Clinton operated under. Why are they complaining? So this person who wrote this comment is wrong. This is clearly, and when you apply the law, someone says that you're hating, that it's crazy that people they conflate things and they want to use words to make people look bad. But all they're doing is simply painting themselves as liars. All right. This other person says, concerning the immigration enforcement, let me know when this saves America any money, since that's the excuse for doing any of this, to reduce the national debt, increase jobs for American citizens. So when ICE the ICE, okay, this person was talking about the ICE Block app. When the ICE Block app costs the US any money, I'll have a legitimate complaint. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of bureaucratic BS trying to pass as policy agenda. All right, so people squish words together, and I'm sorry, but this is just someone squishing words together and not making any sense. And clearly, they are pretending. I don't want to believe that they don't know how to count, but they are pretending that they don't know how to count. All right, so when immigration goes down, low-income jobs for Americans become available, and most of these, like the cannabis farm that we covered, most of these farms will not be able to pay lower than the legal minimum wage allowed in the United States. So what we have here is a situation where once the illegal immigrants have been removed, legal immigrants who come in and with work permits are then allowed to work under the approved legal minimum wage. Other Americans can come in and equally work under the approved minimum wage. You don't have illegal immigrants coming in and taking jobs away from people who should have these at minimum wage, but these illegals come in and work at less than minimum wage and are being paid under the table. That is how the economy, that is how jobs for American citizens goes up. How does it reduce the national debt? States like California have been spending on illegal, have been using free medical care on illegal immigrants, and they have also hit a deficit in their spending on healthcare. So when you spend money for things that they shouldn't be spent on, all right, you hit a deficit, and because there's a deficit, all right, that means that the country has to find money to cover that deficit, and then it basically causes the country to need to borrow in order to cover those deficits. It's simple math, all right? Money doesn't just appear, it doesn't materialize. And then some people think that because the government has the ability to print money, that all they have to do is print money. They don't have to borrow. Okay? And that's the mistake that a lot of liberals make. They think that because the government has the power to print money, that they simply print money and it's okay, and that the United States is a law unto itself. No, the money that the United States uses for projects is borrowed money. They don't just print dollars because they need to spend. If the United States prints money, the economy will crash. All right, so that is that's where I'm going to stop. I don't want to go too far. There are lots of comments in here. I didn't know that there was going to be so many to cover. So we're going to be ending here now. I would love to have more comments in the chat, but we're going to try to make this. We're going to try and make it back here tomorrow, and I hope you can join us same time tomorrow. We want to continue to look at how this story is developing. We want to see what is going to be unfolding with the Epstein situation. I think that with the calls from MAGA for the firing of Pam Bondi, we're going to see a real conflict between President Trump and his base, because a lot of us want Pam Bondi gone because she has really embarrassed the base. She has. We rooted for her when she was appointed. We wanted her to be in there because she had a record that spoke for itself. She was the most confirmable AG, and we rooted for Cash and Bongino. We went after both of them because they were the most vocal of the three before they got into office. They were the most vocal about this Epstein situation. But we found out that after they got in, they weren't as vocal. But Pam Bondi, who wasn't vocal about it before she got in, became the most vocal, and she was the one that basically created this entire situation that we're dealing with today. So let me know in the comment section or in the chat what you think. We're going to be wrapping up. And look, this entire experience is all about us having conversations, and I'm really looking forward to us, putting our ideas out there. Look, whether you agree or disagree, okay, we're going to try and create a safe, decent environment to have a conversation. We might have heated conversations occasionally in the chat. We might have people who disagree severely, but look, we have to be like kids, okay? I remember when I was in elementary school, and my friends and I would walk back home from school, and we would have like fiery arguments about our favorite shows. For example, how many of you watched Voltron? Okay, the Voltron Force from the 80s, the early 80s. All right, so some of us used to have these epic fights about who the best lion was. All right, my favorite was the black lion because it was the torso. But other people just chose lions based on their favorite color. There was a red lion, yellow lion, green lion, and then there were epic fights about who's the best. And these were like fights that would rage from the school gate till we got home. But you know what would happen when we got home? We'll just shake hands and say, okay, see you tomorrow. And then, look, let's not take all of this too seriously. Okay, let's not take all this too seriously. Are these conversations important? Yes, but they're not they're not so important that we should begin to treat others like they're less than human because they don't see things the same way we do. Let's discuss ideas. Let us disagree based on ideas, but let's leave it at that. Let's not begin to demonize and attack each other because of the differences that we have. But let's find common ground, have conversations. For example, we all want to be happy. We all want to be safe. We all want our children to live in a world that is safe. We want them to have more opportunities than we did. And in order to do that, we should encourage the government or vote in people who will bring up policies that would create an environment for our children to thrive better than we did. Okay, that's the whole idea. And having these conversations is a decent way of making that happen. All right, so I appreciate you being a part of this live stream. We're going to be calling it. I need to wrap this up. I enjoy hanging out with you guys. I would say that I love seeing you guys engaging in the comment section and in the live chat, and we'll continue to have these conversations. We'll see what comes up tomorrow in the news. Let's expect more Epstein news to come out because this is not going away. If the Trump administration does not face up to this situation, if they do not have a face-to-face, especially with the podcast environment or ecosystem where they can have long-form conversations and ask the hard questions and spend hours interrogating what went wrong, I don't think this is going away unless this is satisfactory. And Trump saying that nobody cares about this is a huge mistake. I don't know who's lying to him. I don't know if he is intentionally trying to tell people that it doesn't matter, that other things are more important. I don't know if he's trying to protect Pam Bondi. However, some people think that she's on her way out. So we'll see what happens over the next few days, because Kash Patel and Dan Bongino have both said that if she isn't gone, that they will be resigning. And that's the word on the street. So let's see what happens. All right, so we'll be calling it a night. Thank you so much for being a part of this. If you are watching this after the fact, please leave a comment, and then we'll pick up your comments after when we go live again. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and God bless you.